the privileged and non-privileged sections, and between oppressor nations and oppressed. Now there is a sense in Britain that working class solidarity only spans between workers in Britain and throughout Europe, but as we understand it, labour within the global south, directly or indirectly, makes up the majority of the world's value. The fight against capitalism, the fight against imperialism for the most oppressed section of the world means withdrawing from this imperialist system that dominates them. Not being able to see this may be pinned down to ignorance. However, it's often the case here in Britain that it can actually be ideology that reflects racist capital masquerading as the left wing. A case in point, the Labour Party. If we take back to 2003, the invasion of Iraq, where 1 million people have died as a result of imperialist conquest for natural resources, the Labour Party has never been a party for progress, has never been a party for working class. For who, we must ask, these parties serve? The people that is not. It also means that anti-imperialism is class struggle. Is class struggle. So join us here today on our speak out against this system. If you want to get involved in this form of politics, have a voice, join us here today, see how you can make a difference. We're over.
Today we're going to hear about British imperialism and imperialism around the world. And it only makes sense to start with Ireland, Britain's oldest colony. For over 800 years, British imperialism has tried to control Ireland for their own interests. They have deployed a number of tactics to achieve this by force, coercion and bribery. In the 16th century, Britain used the new tactic of colonisation. They cleared the lands owned by Irish people, driving them to worthless lands, forced migration or death. Over 1 million Irish people died in only 5 years of the so-called potato famine. Hundreds of thousands died on coffin ships as they attempted to escape this brutal genocide, and over 1 million Irish people immigrated to the North Americas and to Britain. Britain established control over the lands, giving it to people from Britain in an attempt to control, anglicize and apparently civilize Ireland. Ireland is still living with the legacy of that failed tactic today. Irish people have faced racism on behalf of British imperialism. Rich British landowners in Ireland continue to exploit the Irish people, and using the tactic of divide and conquer was used to strengthen the British stronghold in the occupied 6 counties. The same tactics were deployed through the Americas and the rest of the world by British imperialism and then by other imperialist countries to this very day. Palestine is a classic example. Our Palestinian brothers and sisters cannot breathe under the settler colonial state, with the Zionist state using tactics which the illegal state of Israel learned from the British. When Ireland was partitioned 100 years ago, Britain put an administration in the occupied 6 counties, and the 26 southern counties in complete defiance of the Irish people. Gradually, Britain began to lose its grip on the 26 counties, only to be replaced with a new emerging imperial totally unreformed police force, with over 40% of its budget going to MI5. Draconian laws to try and quash any opposition to this, with police harassment, orchestrated sectarian violence, and miscarriages of justice. This is an extension of the British state in Ireland, under the gaze of so-called peace agreement and power sharing. Since the signing